When people look at a grand piano, they see a beautiful piece of furniture. They see polished mahogany, elegant ivory keys, and a symbol of high society and refinement. But as a master restorer, I don't see furniture. I see a ticking bomb. What the general public doesn't understand is the sheer, terrifying physical violence hidden beneath that polished wooden lid. To create the sound of a concert grand piano, you have to stretch over 230 high-tensile steel strings tightly across a massive cast-iron plate. Combined, those strings exert over 40,000 pounds, 20 tons of continuous, brutal tension. If that cast iron plate has even a microscopic structural flaw, the entire instrument doesn't just go out of tune, it catastrophically implodes. I have spent my entire life mastering the art of balancing that massive, dangerous tension to create beautiful music. I just never realized that the most unstable, catastrophic pressure in my life wasn't inside an antique instrument. It was sleeping in my bed. My name is Julian. I'm 41 years old, and I am a master piano restorer and luthier. I specialize in bringing 19th century concert grand pianos back from the dead. 6 years ago, I married Elena. Elena was an elite talent manager and publicist in the classical music world. She thrived in the glamorous, champagne-soaked environment of symphony halls, dealing with wealthy donors, prodigy musicians, and European aristocrats. I was the quiet, introverted craftsman who preferred the absolute silence of my workshop. But we were a team. I brought the historical masterpieces back to life, and she understood how to market them to the wealthiest collectors on the planet. 3 years ago, I acquired the absolute holy grail of the music world, the shattered, water-damaged remains of an 1880s custom grand piano built for European royalty. For 3 agonizing years, I worked 80-hour weeks. I hand-carved a new Sitka spruce soundboard, recast the massive iron plate, and painstakingly sourced period-correct materials. Appraisers who saw the early photographs estimated that once fully restored and concert-ready, the instrument would be worth roughly $5 million to a private museum. I promised Elena this piano was our empire. I told her that when I finally finished the restoration, we would never have to worry about money again. She would be the wife of a legend. But Elena didn't want to wait for the final tuning. She looked at my calloused hands and the endless nights I spent covered in sawdust, and she decided she wanted the $5 million without having to share it with the mechanic in the workshop. And she found a billionaire who was more than willing to help her steal the music. The decay of our marriage started when Elena's agency partnered with a massive global fine arts foundation. The chairman of that foundation was a man named Sterling. Sterling was 48 years old and the absolute poster boy for high society arrogance. He didn't know how to read sheet music, and he certainly didn't know how to tune an instrument. He was a ruthless corporate financier who used his arts foundation as a tax shelter and a way to buy his way into the company of royalty and celebrities. He wore bespoke Italian tuxedos, flew his private jet to Vienna for the weekend, and treated brilliant working-class craftsmen like disposable factory workers. In my industry, guys like Sterling are considered absolute parasites. Suddenly, Elena was spending all her time at Sterling's Glass Tower headquarters, claiming she was advising him on a massive new philanthropic concert series. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they sounded like a piano dropping down a flight of stairs. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Elena started actively belittling my life's work. "Julian, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her $4,000 designer handbag onto our kitchen counter. "Sterling manages a $500 million endowment. He builds symphony halls. You've been sitting in a basement sniffing wood glue for 3 years and haven't made a single dime. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your historical accuracy, they care about the branding. Second, the intense secrecy regarding her devices. Elena changed the passcode on her laptop. She started taking phone calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside the house. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my workshop's logistics. Elena, a woman who absolutely loathed the smell of varnish in my studio, suddenly asked me exactly when the final string tensioning phase would be complete and where I kept the physical, notarized provenance documents for the $5 million piano. When a publicist suddenly asks for the ownership papers to a priceless antique, you don't answer the question. You run a deep-level diagnostic on the foundation. When you keep a $5 million piece of history in your workshop, you don't rely on a simple padlock. My entire facility was routed through a custom security mainframe that logged every single motion, temperature shift, and data transfer. One Saturday night, while Elena was supposedly sleeping in the guest room because she had a migraine, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the shop. I opened the secure app. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my local authentication server to an unauthorized external flash drive. I didn't storm down the hall and kick the door open. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my monitor. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating directly with Sterling. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated, multi-million-dollar heist and federal insurance fraud. Sterling wrote, "The Saudi prince is confirmed for the Symphony Gala in New York next week. If we debut the 1880s grand piano on stage under the banner of my foundation, he has agreed to wire $8 million to my offshore account to buy it instantly. Have you secured the physical provenance documents yet?" Elena replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master authentication files from his server right now. Tomorrow, when he goes to the lumber yard in Oregon for 3 days, I'll hire a specialized piano moving crew. We load the piano into a climate-controlled truck. Before I leave, I'll disable the sprinklers, knock over a kerosene lamp, and burn the workshop to the ground. We'll tell Julian the piano was destroyed in a tragic fire. He'll be completely devastated, but he'll file the insurance claim. We debut the piano in New York. I serve him with divorce papers on Monday, and we'll be on your jet to Monaco. He's just a naive carpenter, Sterling. He won't be able to fight your corporate lawyers." Sterling responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The carpenter is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, staring at the glowing screen as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 5 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal my life's work, commit arson to destroy my livelihood, hijack my $5 million masterpiece, publicly humiliate me, and leave me utterly destroyed while they became multi-millionaires. They thought I was just a naive carpenter. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated kinetic destruction a master restorer is capable of engineering. If you want to destroy a thief, you don't lock the vault. You leave the vault wide open, but you replace the gold with highly unstable dynamite. I didn't confront her. If I did, Sterling's army of corporate lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim Elena was a legal partner in my business, and tie the piano up in court for a decade until the bank foreclosed on my shop. I needed them to steal the piano. I needed Sterling to proudly place it on a stage in front of his billionaire investors and let the world watch it sing. So I went to work on the physics. I took the real, priceless, original 1880 soundboard, the authentic action mechanism, and the real ivory keys. I carefully removed them, packed them in armored crates, drove to a highly secure, climate-controlled art vault, and locked them away. Then I went back to my shop. I took a standard, cheap, modern piano action and shoved it into the antique casing. To the naked eye, and especially to a corporate hack like Sterling, it looked absolutely identical to the real masterpiece. It played perfectly. It sounded decent. But a piano's true strength is in its massive cast iron plate, the harp that holds the 40,000 pounds of string tension. Using a diamond-tipped micro drill, I intentionally introduced massive, catastrophic structural flaws into the iron plate. I drilled microscopic, invisible stress fractures directly along the primary tension nodes of the bass strings. Then I applied a specialized chemical solvent to the wooden pin block, drastically weakening the friction that holds the tuning pins in place. I tuned the piano perfectly to concert pitch, but I knew the math. The structural integrity was now hanging by a literal thread. The piano would hold its tune and survive the gentle movement of being moved. It would even survive a light, gentle rehearsal. But the moment a world-class concert pianist sat down and struck the keys with the massive, aggressive, heavy-handed force required for a dramatic romantic concerto, the kinetic energy would overwhelm the weakened iron. The fake piano was essentially a 40,000-pound pressurized fragmentation bomb. I placed the rigged instrument in the center of the room. I left the cloned authentication files on my server. The next morning, I packed my bags for the lumber yard in Oregon. I kissed Elena goodbye. "Have a great trip, Julian," she smiled, handing me my coffee. "Take care of the shop, Elena. You know that piano is my masterpiece." "I'll guard it with my life," she promised. I drove away. I let her steal the bomb. Now, they just had to press the keys. I didn't go to Oregon. I drove straight to the downtown offices of the FBI's Art and Antiquities Fraud Division, accompanied by the most aggressive corporate litigator in the city. I handed the federal agents my original, time-stamped purchase agreements for the antique piano, the bank wire transfers proving I was the sole owner, and the crystal-clear iCloud transcripts of Elena and Sterling explicitly conspiring to commit grand larceny, arson, and massive corporate fraud. My lawyer smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Julian," he said, "Sterling is using a stolen, highly insured historical artifact to solicit millions of dollars from foreign oligarchs at a public gala. That isn't just theft, that is massive federal wire fraud and international smuggling. He is lying to his donors on a monumental scale." "Agents," I said calmly, "my wife is stealing the piano right now. Sterling is flying it to New York for a massive philanthropic gala this Saturday. He is going to feature it on stage." The lead FBI agent looked at the texts regarding the arson and grinned. "Mr. Last Name, my local units just secured your workshop before she could light the match. We won't stop the gala. We want to catch him attempting the fraudulent sale to the Saudi buyer. We will have undercover agents in the audience. Let him put on a show." They were building a massive, glittering glass castle on a stage in New York, and I had given them the hammer to shatter it. Saturday night, live from Symphony Hall in Manhattan. Sterling had packed the theater with 2,000 elite investors, Wall Street bankers, and foreign royalty. He was live streaming the event globally to pump up his foundation's prestige. I sat in my dark hotel room watching the high-definition stream on my laptop. I poured myself 2 fingers of very expensive bourbon. Sterling strutted onto the stage to thunderous applause. The room went dead, spotlights swirling, and the magnificent, polished, antique grand piano sat perfectly in the center. Elena was standing in the VIP front row, looking incredibly proud, waiting for her $8 million payday. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling announced into his microphone, his voice echoing across the symphony hall. "Tonight, we make history. I present to you a lost masterpiece of the 19th century, meticulously restored by my foundation. To play it, we welcome the greatest concert pianist of our generation." The crowd went dead silent. A famous, brilliant Russian piano prodigy walked onto the stage. He bowed, sat down on the leather bench, and dramatically raised his hands high above the keyboard, preparing to play the thunderous, violent opening chords of Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. I looked at my screen. I knew the math. I knew the extreme, catastrophic internal pressure I had baked into that cast iron plate. The prodigy brought his hands down with maximum aggressive force onto the keys. Bang! It sounded like a literal cannon firing inside the symphony hall. The piano didn't make music. The immense kinetic energy of the heavy hammers striking the strings hit the catastrophic stress fractures in the iron plate. The metal violently, spectacularly shattered. 40,000 pounds of raw, physical tension was released in a fraction of a millisecond. With a deafening, horrific shriek of tearing metal, all 230 high-tensile steel strings violently snapped simultaneously. The internal wooden soundboard exploded outward. A massive, terrifying cloud of splintered wood, snapped wire, and metal shrapnel blasted out of the piano, completely blowing the heavy wooden lid off its hinges. The $5 million antique was instantly reduced to a pile of smoking, jagged kindling right in the middle of the stage. The Saudi buyer, sitting next to Sterling, stood up in absolute disgust. "You insult me with this garbage? You try to sell me a defective, exploding prop? You are a fraud!" Before Sterling's security could even escort him out of the VIP box, the heavy doors of the suite burst open. Dozens of FBI agents in tactical windbreakers marched directly inside. I took a slow, deeply satisfying sip of my bourbon, smiled at the chaotic, screaming live stream, and closed my laptop. You cannot unexplode a piano on live television in front of the FBI. The fallout was an absolute, unmitigated corporate massacre. Sterling was arrested right in his VIP box in front of all his aristocratic investors for massive federal wire fraud, attempted international smuggling, and conspiracy. Because he had lied to his donors about owning the asset and attempted to sell stolen goods, his foundation was immediately seized by the government. His investors sued him into absolute oblivion. His empire collapsed, and he was facing 15 years in federal prison. Elena's life was vaporized. Sterling, realizing he was facing a decade behind bars, immediately blamed her. He told the FBI that she was a rogue manager who had supplied him with the rigged piano and forged the documents, throwing her to the wolves to save himself. She was arrested before she could even leave the theater. She called me from a federal holding cell in New York, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. Julian, please! The FBI is here! The piano exploded. You have to tell them you made a mistake with the strings. Please, I'll do anything!" "I didn't make a mistake, Elena," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "I gave you exactly what you stole. You just forgot to check the tension. I read your messages about burning down my shop, by the way. I hope you enjoy the acoustics in federal court." I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage because she was a federally indicted felon facing charges for conspiring to steal a $5 million marital asset and commit arson. The judge showed zero mercy. He awarded me 100% of our marital assets, the house, and my entire workshop. She walked away with millions in legal debt and a permanently ruined life. It's been almost 3 years since that gala in New York. A month after the arrests, I retrieved the real 1880s action mechanism, soundboard, and ivory keys from the bank vault. Working in absolute peace, I built a new, flawless casing for it. It was perfect. I sold it legally and quietly to a legitimate, highly respected museum in Europe for $6 million. I paid off all my debts, bought a massive new commercial restoration facility, and I now take bespoke commissions purely for the love of the craft. I never have to answer to a corporate boss or worry about money ever again. Last I heard, Elena avoided prison by taking a plea deal and testifying against Sterling, but she is completely blacklisted from the entertainment and classical music industries globally. She is currently working at a budget furniture store, selling cheap particle board desks for $15 an hour, knowing every single day that she held a masterpiece and willingly turned it into kindling. Sterling is currently serving 7 years in a federal penitentiary, completely bankrupt and ruined. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this: a beautiful exterior means absolutely nothing if the structure underneath cannot handle the pressure. If your partner thinks they can use you as a stepping stone, steal your genius, and leave you to rot in the workshop while they take the applause, don't panic. Don't fight them for the stage. Smile, hand them the instrument, and let them confidently sit down to play in front of the whole world. And right when they think they're about to strike the final chord, watch the tension completely destroy them. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's the most satisfying public humiliation you've ever seen. Stay sharp, trust the math, and always check the tension. It's been almost 3 years since that gala in New York. A month after the arrests, I retrieved the real 1880s action mechanism, soundboard, and ivory keys from the bank vault. Working in absolute peace, I built a new, flawless casing for it. It was perfect. I sold it legally and quietly to a legitimate, highly respected museum in Europe for $6 million. I paid off all my debts, bought a massive new commercial restoration facility, and I now take bespoke commissions purely for the love of the craft. I never have to answer to a corporate boss or worry about money ever again. Last I heard, Elena avoided prison by taking a plea deal and testifying against Sterling, but she is completely blacklisted from the entertainment and classical music industries globally. She is currently working at a budget furniture store, selling cheap particle board desks for $15 an hour, knowing every single day that she held a masterpiece and willingly turned it into kindling. Sterling is currently serving 7 years in a federal penitentiary, completely bankrupt and ruined. If there's a lesson to be learned here, it's this: a beautiful exterior means absolutely nothing if the structure underneath cannot handle the pressure. If your partner thinks they can use you as a stepping stone, steal your genius, and leave you to rot in the workshop while they take the applause, don't panic. Don't fight them for the stage. Smile, hand them the instrument, and let them confidently sit down to play in front of the whole world. And right when they think they're about to strike the final chord, watch the tension completely destroy them. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's the most satisfying public humiliation you've ever seen. Stay sharp, trust the math, and always check the tension.